Happy New Year.
Yes. Happy next 12 months, man.
Yeah. How was things around the rest of the holiday season after having some fun learning about your Kolbe?
Well, just being connected to my communication style is was probably the most important thing that happened. And it's the one thing that I think because I come downstairs, I'm in full creativity mode, rocking and rolling. And then I find that two things. If I get interrupted, I'm like, if I get interrupted, then it's gone. It's just like,
Mm,
choop. And if I try to come back here, so was able to explain that so that my wife, especially, she just comes in and says, "Hey, are you in creativity mode right now?" And I'm like, "Yep." She goes, "Okay, cool. I'll talk to you in a bit." And it's like, wow, that was awesome. And then number two is just, you know, I now catch myself explaining things to my wife where maybe it all made sense to me in the moment, but I was not giving her enough information up front for it to make sense to her at the same
mm.
time. And so I catch myself even working with clients, patients, whatever, doing the same thing, going, all right, roll back the script a little bit and then start from there so that people can be on board with where you're at, it's been huge.
Wow, that's amazing. And so, and then for your wife, Megan, have you obviously, I mean, the way that you're connecting on that, and it's like self awareness, self recognition, all of this, everything that we do in this space is around a heightened degree of self awareness. But it's hard to be self aware of instinct because it's
Mhm.
instinctual.
Mm.
But now you have a degree of that. So you're starting to see it. And it sounds like she's also starting to see it. And so, is there anything that you've recognized maybe with your wife, with Megan, that has also shown up as far as interactions or her asking for more detail or more clarity or information?
For a husband, it feels like there's more patience involved.
Okay.
And, I realized, we haven't had a chance to implement this it's only been a short period of time. But I catch myself going, look, this isn't 100% course correct. It's a little bit of the battle of Evermore because you are who you are. But with Colby, you now have a new means by which to accept who you are and understand who you are, which then promotes facilitating changing much more versus before going, you're trying to course correct, but you don't understand really where's the root?
Yeah. Course
So,
correcting can mean fighting instinct.
hmm hmm
So you also, it sounds to me like the way I would run it through Richard's program and spit it back out is to, as a check-in point is you're with this awareness and maybe a little bit of clarity would be the word I would use. You now know how to advocate for certain elements of what you need a little bit more. Would that be a good way of addressing it?
yes. Yeah. And I think the number one key is you said the word awareness. If you didn't have that awareness, I'll just use myself first context that I would think, how come you're not getting this? What part of what I'm saying doesn't make sense? Those used to be part of my script because I didn't have the awareness to go, hey, Kyle, you're here, they're there. Come on down and join them and bring them up to you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that having that awareness is, yeah, it's a game changer, especially if, marriage huge, right? If you can make the team work at home, you can make the team work anywhere. So it's opposite, I find, especially working with clients that they make it work elsewhere, but they can't make it work at home because it's that much closer. I think mastering it at home, you're going to be able to nail it elsewhere because it'll become that much more habitual. Because if you can make something at home a habit, you can make something outside the home a habit too.
I really love that. I think that's a great distinction. I think that everyone should take a page out of your book when it comes to that. Speaking of pages out of the book or in the book, we talked about printing the indexes, and so you had a version that you when you and I met and to do a consultation, you had a version already printed. I sent you the version that I had, which you requested. Did you print that off because you're more of a 3D paper kind of guy and color, right?
New one, the one-on-one,
The A to A report, yeah, yeah,
and then the one I scribbled notes on when I was talking with you the first time.
got it.
And so it's nice to have the A to A because I was like, what is A to A? What does that mean? And I was like, it's Megan and I, my wife and I, with a comparison with notes and tips and tricks, the
Mhm.
contables, which is really cool.
And prior to, you had the reports, you'd only had them for a short period of time. You had a chance to access audios of Kathy Kolbe explaining, the components. After we met, did you go back and listen to anything from Kathy again? Or you just kind of printed everything so you could go through it and put a little bit more focus on the connable tip areas?
Yeah. So I listened to everything before we met. My wife, she's like, just give me the Coles notes. Okay. So I'd give her the Coles notes. But since I have not gone back to listen to her, so that's a good tip because maybe there's something that I wouldn't have been aware of
Mm,
the first go around that I, perhaps would pick up on now and solidify. That's a
yeah.
good.
What I would suggest, because the way the report and then the functionality works on the Colby site, if you go back and listen to the audios, they take you from color bar to color bar. Okay. I would actually encourage for you, I think you should go to the last one, which is implementer, because that's where you initiate action and
Mhm.
listen to that one first, and then almost go kind of in a backwards order to some degree based on where your bars are. So rather than listening to it in the order the platform is designed, listen to it in the order your instinct is designed.
But
Okay. And, another thing that we talked
you
quite
should
a
have
bit
a pro
about.
tip page.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a brand new one. I just came up
Yeah,
with that
that's a
right
good pro
now.
tip. Put that one down.
My Colby is to be inspired in the conversation to some degree when we're having a great conversations. Another thing that I thought was really interesting in our conversation, you talked a lot about home projects. We talked about the use of your implementer energy and the need to do the physical projects around the house. And also we talked quite a bit about the desire, and there was a way that you put it, and I mentioned it as, there's no point in even starting unless we can build it right. Like you have to make sure we might as well build it right the first time so we don't have to go back and fix it later. And to a degree, that was almost creating like a version of analysis paralysis, but it's a different variation of it where you need a certain degree of materials, quality, elements in place in order to make sure that something is going to be your version of functional.
Mm.
And so we talked a little bit about the concept of 80% is good enough to get started rather than 100%. And the reference point was that your 100% is everyone else's 120%.
Yeah.
And how is that kind of connected for you since our conversation?
Well, Richard, as a recovering perfectionist for the last 20 years, obviously there was some feedback in regards to, in our conversation, we were talking about my next project involving multiple practitioners, honing down to chiropractic. So anyway, I created a whole new system, new module that's specific to one practitioner. Got a hold of my VA and said, all right, so sorry, this is version 4. I said, good news is I paid you for the first 3 that we're never going to use. Let's do this 4th one. We're going to start with the website. I've given it a timeline of 3 weeks. Let's see what we can do within 2, but know that I want to be able to have this 80% done before we press play. And I was like, but I said it. And so she probably was like, okay, this is new. Sounds good to me. And I did say to her, I said, in that communication, I says, does this worry you or are you excited? And she goes, I'm excited. I said, wonderful. Let's give her.
Okay.
So yeah.
So just almost, it's so interesting to have like almost the visceral reaction of you like even communicating it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But you followed up with the check-in on the teammate, like, okay, how will this work for you? And to gauge that sort of thing. And I think what would be helpful, and just to add an idea, in that VA relationship, because you've already had a working relationship up to this point where she's learned there's an expectation almost of a certain degree of like completeness or quality. And it may have created, and I don't know, but you can tell me if I'm correct on this, it may have created almost like an increasing amount of check-in points. Hey, is this good enough? Is this enough? Is this sufficient? Like that type of querying. So what I might suggest that you consider is maybe, working with an AI tool or something, a ChatGPT, flush out what would some of your standards be? What does done look like in this little micro area, this micro area, this micro area? So think about setting them up into like buckets, 5 or 6, maybe 7 buckets, and try to figure out what does complete look like to you inside of that little micro bucket. So then you can provide almost like a guidebook to the teammate of like, hey, this is what I'm hoping for as a standard. And then ask yourself the question, when is the check-in point required? Okay.
I'm
How
going to
far?
ask, am I going to get a recording of this, or
Yeah,
should I be
absolutely.
taking notes?
Absolutely.
Because I'm refraining as you're speaking, saying, Kyle, be present. Don't take the notes.
Yeah. We'll get you a copy of the recording,
Okay,
no
cool,
problem.
cool.
But
All right.
but
So sorry.
that way, I think you're gonna have like the leverage element where you can, here's where I think you can really strive to see certain advantages in your natural, like initiating implementer world. That degree of the need of quality or certain elements that you have in your mind's eye that you can see, and you're seeing them in this like this tactile kind of a world, this implemented physical element world. What is this like when it's done? Component is to be in a position where you break it into smaller components, find ways to isolate. Hey, this is what I'm hoping for as an expectation. Here's the big grand thing. Here's kind of what I think 80% looks like. And hey, I want you to get it up to this point and only check in with me at this, if you have this question, or this question. Make your questions very specific and also convey that you should ask them to provide their first suggestion to the answer to the question. Does that make sense? So like they're coming at you with a question.
Yeah.
If you receive the question, your brain's going to go into, what is the most complete version of this? And it might be a make work project that gets created from a single question. Have you ever experienced that before?
So what would be, thinking of that, what would be the ideal prompt for, let's say, ChatGPT to be able to say to it, here, can you give me this? Because it may want to know, well, tell me about you.
So
Right. Have you done this before where you have your prompts set up for that?
yeah, a good version one for you with this would be number one, load your Kolbe report as an attachment.
Yeah.
Okay. And then say, hey, based on this, here's some tendencies that I've noticed of myself in the past. I'm looking at building out a major project. I'm working with a virtual assistant. I want to make sure I don't overbuild. I want to make sure that I get things to a go level. And I'm looking for a ready, fire, aim scenario on my project, not a ready, aim, fire. I want to fire first, and I can adjust and aim after, and recognize that I can add additional components or construct on more elements as needed once we're operational. And then say, so based on that, I want to create some guidelines on communicating with my teammate on when they should ask questions. So A, they feel appropriate to do so. B, they don't ask me a question that takes me down a rabbit hole that makes it so I have to amplify the size of the project. It creates a brand new project. So I want to convey to them that A, it's okay to ask questions. B, how specific I want the questions. And C, that they need to provide their recommendation on the next step so that we can move forward quickly rather than getting bogged down in my own world's desire for higher quality.
Yeah. I love the part about the collaboration on allowing them their first suggestion, which to me is going to be double fold because A, they feel like now they're part of it, which is going to drive their passion towards it, their desire to make it so, but also that their opinion counts. They're not just receiving orders. So I like that. That's a good.
Well, and they're working for you. They want to make you happy. They want to develop the project that's in your mind because that's where it came from. But they're a lot of times people, especially if they are built in, let's say, a high fact find, high follow through world, like because your wife initiates in a follow through world. So without enough context or pieces in place to build or construct the system, that can create tension. We talked about that in our call as well. And so she needs more information, and she also needs more timeline elements, because when you're building processes and systems, often there's time elements. There's the bridge of the past, present, and the future, and that's how processes are built. They have to compartmentalize these kind of components. Like if you're, as an example, I'm in the process of moving, as you're aware. Well, I work with ChatGPT because I'm not a process person, and I had it say, look, I got 15 days left. Here's a laundry list of items off the top of my head that need to be completed in that time frame, including a trip to the dump and certain things that need to be packed up. There's certain things that need to be sold. And here's the timeline that I see. Can you construct this into a systematic timeline? Like we got things to eat in our freezer, so we don't have to spoil food, like all these elements that I wouldn't have considered. And I'm using GPT as my follow through person to channel that energy that I don't naturally channel myself.
I love it. And it's just to be completely transparent. I am just, what's the best way to word this? Creating things, right? So writing music, I was like, I am staying away from the AI world because I'm going to keep myself pure, meaning what comes out of my mouth or what I create, I can proudly say so. But now, not that I use it for that, but I use it for structure, which is what you're just explaining is having that structure, because structure is sexy, right? Like without structure, you're just sort of a boat out in the ocean without your compass or your sail. And so I'm now appreciating, the point I want to get across is I'm appreciating AI in a completely different way versus it being an intruder that's taken away from my personal creativity. It's an enhancement, which has been a big game changer for me. And it really has reflected on what I've turned out in this last 2 months of time, well, 3 months of time. So yeah, to see when you gave me suggestions and it's, all this AI stuff, I thought, okay, I can adopt this. Whereas a year ago, we would have had this call and I'd be like, yeah, no. So it's a huge tool.
Well, another key component of that is when you think about your natural energy now, your way of solving problems, your way of doing, knowing that there's a whole host of other elements that are not your natural way of doing. They're almost the antithesis of that.
Mm-hmm.
You can leverage the technology to support you in that antithesis world. And so take the example of, there's a few project ideas and big ideas that you've had that you've tried to convey to your wife, Megan. And sometimes it's not that they're hitting a brick wall. That's not the case at all. She's extremely receptive. She's extremely adaptable, but there's a degree of overwhelm in like this thing that's murky. I think of it as the murk. We're at a slough and you stuck your head in the water, you wouldn't want to open your eyes because it's all kinds of stuff. There's sediment, there's things in the water that you can't see clarity on. And so you can use the GPT tool or a version of that to help you refine those clarity elements and say, take what I already know in my brain and my vision, my creation, this end project that I can see when it's constructed, and help me convey that in the language that would help this person understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you use it as an interpreter, essentially, like Google Translate, but it's translating the way that you communicate to a person in their language that they naturally see. And then you can also start to prompt it to say, help me find ways to activate this person's greatest energy so that we can help because that fills their bucket, it fills their need of using that energy, but doing it in a way where they get to be their creative self, right? Personally, for me, and it'll just share, I've been using AI mostly a lot to be actually an enhancement to my creative force because I tend to activate in conversation. Well, sometimes there's no one around to speak to other than Richard. Well, walking around the house pacing and talking to myself might be great for Richard, but an onlooker may not say the same thing. But I can have that rolling real-time conversation now with an AI platform and have a recording of it essentially in real time that I can ask it to summarize all the best ideas, the most actionable ideas, and then start to flush out how to put them into motion. So the ability to move forward with speed is drastically enhanced by being able to leverage that in my world personally. And it's actually amplified my creativity, not diminished it, because where I used to get stuck and somewhere, you have a 7 kind of implementer energy, I've got a 6. So I'm pretty close in that zone. I like things and I'm always, okay, well, how do we build? I want to get into building it now. Let's build the thing. Let's make it real. And I jump ahead into the making it real before maybe I've flushed out all the elements of the risks or like, okay, well, what are the materials we need to build it? And like, well, I will understand it better if we construct it now. I want to build it now. And I go into build mode immediately. Whereas what's really necessary is more fleshing out to verify, is this even worth fleshing out? Mm. And I can do that with an AI tool now in a way that I couldn't do before.
Yes. No, I'm 100% with that because that's kind of what's happened in the last 3, 4 months. I'm just like, wow, Kyle, reflecting on your 2025, some of the end results that you were looking for weren't there, but what did you create? And I created in 2025 6 times that I ever did in my most creative year. But because I didn't look back on it that way, I'm glad I did. I was like, wow, you've got this is all set up. It's ready to go. And that was because of the AI implementation. And you're right, just amplifying. And that's such a good term to use for the people who may think like me before, where I was not open to AI. I want to protect my creativity.
Mm-hmm. Well, and now we talked a little bit about, again, the need for physical things, projects, tools, the yard work. You talked about looking outside and seeing the yard and then being distracted by the need to go do yard things.
Mm.
What's shifted or changed anything around that? I mean, other than maybe it's raining outside and you might not have the ability to go out and do that yard work right now, but have you given some more context to that or had any one-on-one conversations with your wife about how you might approach that differently, knowing that you need to be able to implement that to some degree in your life and that you can't restrict yourself from it or feel bad about that desire, but being more intentional about it instead?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, not a lot of time, but I did put this in exercise. You know, we live on a lake. We got all these reeds that come up and they stay on the lawn. And as the ecosystem changes with the seasons, and I was looking outside and I'm like, that's going to rot the lawn. I thought, okay, if you get this done, then go. So I almost, instead of dropping what I was doing, getting that done, coming back and trying to get my gears running again, I completed here and then I completed there. And I felt good about both versus only completing one and trying to come back to what was I thinking? What was I doing at the moment? Or trying to get back in the mode, if you wish.
Mm.
So that's happened already. And then also just what needs to be done right now versus what has to be done. And, for me, being outside is a huge thing. And so I sit there and I go, okay, you're going to drop what you're doing right now. You want to wash the cars, go and have some outside time. So I used it as a reward as well. Like who the hell wants to reward themselves by washing vehicles? But I got to be outside washing the rigs, got that taken care of. And it's again, I'm going to always keep saying, it's almost like I stop, I pause and I ask myself, of course, how important is that right now? Where does it fall in the sequence of things that need to be done?
Mm-hmm.
And even if it doesn't get done today, once you're done these, you get to do it first thing tomorrow. So it sounds like a game, but it's working.
I think another thing that might be fun for you to add almost at a gamification model as well is the weather report. And thinking about the forecast for the next couple of days as part of your morning or routine and be like, okay, hey, we got some beautiful sunny weather that's slated to come up. Should I position or adjust my calendar on that day so that I can do some of those outdoory things that are demanding my attention and my energy, but also maximize my advantage at the time of doing it? And there might be something you can play with on that. And I would maybe approach that with your wife and just inquire, hey, what do you think about this? Because she might have an idea on how could we do that in a systematic approach? Maybe she might have an idea how to think through that in a way that you haven't considered. And even if you just try to do that at least one day a week, it's like, cool, I want to have at least one day a week where I'm putting a lot of my energy eggs in the outdoor basket, right? Mm-hmm. And that outdoor basket might be a hike, it might be out on the boat, it could be some of those things, or it could be, hey, here's some projects I want to complete. It can be a bit of a mix of both of those elements. And a small, simple project like washing the cars, you could probably do that in 30 minutes to an hour. You get that energy out, and then you have something on the other side of it. The other thing is you mentioned like the environment, the taking over of reeds and that sort of thing. And that could be a little bit more expansive depending on how much yard space, shoreline that you have to work from. And so you might see your brain look at, okay, I can see this entire amount of shoreline, and this is the size of the project. And so Dunning completion is this entire element. Okay, so what is Dunning complete today?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and for you in that physical world, you actually could go and draw a line, take a 2x4 with you and drop it on the grass and say, I'm only going to go from here to here and I'm going to stop at the 2x4.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel complete because I change the degree to which completeness looks like. Does that make sense?
Yes, that will be interesting. Just thinking of it now, because it's funny that you mentioned weather. It's wintertime. I'm on Vancouver Island. It's a rainforest. So the once a week, if you do get to see that little sun symbol, it's
Mhm.
like, so
Yeah.
I've already done that planning. But then there's times, Richard, where I'll be working and I look outside and I go, it's sunny right now. And I check the weather and it's not for the next 10 days. Go enjoy the sun while it's here. Come back recharged versus pissed off that 7 more days has to go by before the next sunlight comes out, So that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, I think because not only just the advantage of the vitamin D, which is healthy and great for you as you would know better than the average bear with your background, but I think that there's a fervor of intensity on all the things that need to get done and the business, the work, and the business and the work and the meetings and the typical work day 9 to 5 environment. And I don't know how that's not very typical for you, but typical for the world. That world doesn't structure around a weather report. And when you're an entrepreneur and you run your own life, your own business, you can have more autonomy that way. And then the bigger future that you're creating, I feel like knowing that that needs to be something that you put attention on can allow you to be inspired to take those opportunities more frequently and not feel, sometimes I think if we were to go even in my own past, similar to yourself, I would see the sunshine. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta end what I'm doing and go out there and tackle that. And then I might feel a little bit of guilt, like, but I had these other things, these responsibilities. And so do those things get left to the wayside? Hey, sometimes maybe they do. And the reality is maybe they didn't actually need to be done in the first place. And I was creating unnecessary work that never actually needed to be accomplished. Sometimes there's some follow-up activities that did need to get done. And thankfully, my assistant reminds me of those. So, finding that what is the backup option? If you think about a computer and you've got a cloud storage, right? So what is the cloud storage backup of the thing that you are working on that you can have ready to go so that you can be inspired when the sun hits?
Right. Love it. Or is that a question or
I think it. I think it's
yeah,
just
it's a
just
good
something to,
statement. It's a
to
good statement.
ponder, something for you to consider as you go about doing it. And I'm just always curious to see what you create because it'll be yours. It'll be your version. It'll be inspired by your natural gifts, which is going to be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about just kind of recapping our great conversation, we spent a good chunk of our time, of course, focused on Kolbe. We went through Megan's first because she was coming in very fresh. She didn't know anything about it. We then dug into yours, and then we looked at some of those elements of the both of you combined, working with one another, how you can maximize. And then we really spent the rest of our time talking about how we can find ways to amplify or create maybe some of those strengths and that energy, and then direct them intentionally into what's going on with your current business life, your new vision for your business in 2026. And so, if you were to reflect on that, Kyle, what would you say was some of the big aha moments or highlight moments for you having a chance to go through all that together?
Well, at first I was blown away by the tools that are in your tool belt. I was expecting, we're going to talk about the Kolbe assessment, maybe a few other things, and out come, all these incredible ideas and resources and suggestions. And like, it was just like, we were in an amazing brainstorm session. So I was very, very surprised and very grateful for, what you have in your resource toolkits. Whoever works with you, they got lots to know that you have got a very good, I said to my wife afterwards, I said, that guy's like a MacGyver when it comes to business, right? And the reason I say that, because that's always been my nickname, but you're a MacGyver on a totally different level. And so to go back on your question, you know, for my Kolbe, having these sparks, right? Sparks are the best thing for me. I'm like, right, good idea. And so there was a lot of sparks that occurred for my brain. My wife was like, whoa. And then when she looked at the email, she's like, which one do you press? I go, well, it's all recordings, honey. We just press whatever one, it's time stamped. So right now, currently, I am playing around with a couple of the suggestions that you had in regards to, intake forms and questionnaires and so on. So I wouldn't have known that. And I wasn't even expecting that as to be part of the show. So, and much, much gratitude for that.
Right, the follow-up video of going through your system that you received. What were some takeaways that you went through that? Because I was curious. I'd actually forgotten about even recording that video and sending it to you. So thank you for reminding me about that.
It was funny. I had mixed emotions, but because knowing what you have told me about your Kolbe and how you operate, I'm like, okay, I can see how he does this. Because I'm like, I watched that guy's whole video. That was my first instinct. And for me, I thought, well, you know what? This is good because there are so many people that operate that way. So you have to have the parameter. You got to have the people who need the information, people who are going to skip through the information. And so I love the toolbar idea of you're on step 3 of 5. Don't worry, you're almost done. Not that it's a massive thing for what it has to offer, but that I looked at and I thought, okay, this next thing that I'm creating for practitioners, that toolbar has already been put inside there, the measuring stick. And I also thought to myself, and this will be good for, I was thinking of you. Sure, there's the website that has all the modules. There's 5 modules, but the first 3 are the important ones. Module 4 is resources. Module 5 is community. The first 3 are important. I thought, well, in module 4 for resources, put a recording of me voicing what's in that website so that they can go through it once. Maybe they're commuters. They want to listen to it again because there's a lot of structure inside there that'll help them with their practice. So to hear it a few times over versus having to take the journey through the website. So it definitely, number one, we haven't made the changes yet for that, but it now triggered a whole new realm of how I want this next website to look like. So it was good. I really appreciated that. I had no idea. When I said take a look, I meant, take a look so you'll understand Kyle. Man, you went in there and you just like dissected that thing right out and gave me a bunch of suggestions. So again, constantly surprised.
Well, the way I look at it is you're hitting the go button. And what my ideas are just ideas and it comes from my realm. But because you haven't had enough people go through it, you haven't had the feedback from other realms of doing, every other ways of doing. As you're reflecting on some of the things that you learned from my video, from my the insights in Richard's brain, but also the changes you're already making, which is fantastic. I think about every once in a while you get an email with a survey or something to fill in a survey. And then I look at the survey and I said, okay, if it doesn't say how long it's going to take, I don't click on it. If it says you can complete this within 3 minutes or something, I'm like, okay, I can beat 3 minutes. They think I can do it in 3. I should be able to do it in 1. And if I get to the end and I haven't done it in 1, they lied to me on that email because I know I can go faster than what they think can be done in 3 minutes. Right. So like my thought process is, cool, how fast can I actually do it? Let's find out. So I just go into this like, okay, well, I don't have the time right now, but if it only takes me 1 minute out of the 3 minutes, I can make that time. I can make that work. Like I have my next appointment. My next appointment is in 3 minutes. That means I only have 90 seconds to complete it. So like my brain's trying to figure out how can I get more done in that short time frame, and I'm activated by that.
Right.
And it's a weird energy. It's a weird force, but it's almost like, and I explained this. Interesting. I was taking my kids to school today, and I said, "Hey, have we talked about go time?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know. You've mentioned it before, Dad, but I don't really know." I was like, "Well, go time is when it's time for things to happen. Dad's speed is go mode, and go mode is something that is kind of like a freight train. It can't be stopped, and until we're moving, we're in motion." And I said, "So when I say it's go time, you guys should understand, it doesn't mean that you need to change what you're doing, but I need you to understand that where it comes from Dad's energy is like, right now we need to go. And because I've already changed, for the average person, they're ready to leave the house at a certain time. I'm only ready to leave the house right here. But when I'm ready to go, I go and I go fast. Everything that needs to be done is done and I'm out the door. If I forget my wallet, too bad, but I'm ready, I'm out. And so my brain is like, oh my God, why isn't everyone else ready to go? And it's because everyone else needs more time. So that's me always trying to figure out, okay, how can I create more time for other people? So I start to adjust my leaving time frames to be earlier when I turn on my go clock. Does that make sense?
Right.
And so those are like shortcuts that I've had to learn in my own life, and recognizing that other people aren't accustomed to moving at a speed that I'm used to moving at. And it's hard to bring them along sometimes the journey, because I'm already in motion. I'm going. When someone says we're going to do it right now, I ask people, what's the size of your now? And if I see people stand up in the room immediately, I can tell that those are quick start people. Like they initiate in quick start energy. And then some people are like, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow morning. I'm like, tomorrow morning? That's tomorrow morning. That's like
not right now.
that's 8 hours from now. That's not now. Now is now. So that time relevance has a lot of connection, I think, to the Kolbe instinct and where it shows up. And so I'm really excited for your new vision, your business, what you're building. I think it's going to help a ton of people. And I think that there's, of course, great overlap and opportunity for, what you've shared about the increased layers of communication that you can have with your wife. And I think, you've got the printed sheets, which I always recommend. You have your in case of emergency break glass. I don't know if you have the binder or not, if you're going to do it in that format, but I think it's going to be really great to see how the next year progresses for you guys in your business, and also just relationship wise, how you're able to find fun and engaging new ways of communicating that maybe hadn't been available to you before because you didn't know it was an option.
True story. I love it. No, and thank you so much. You've introduced me from a guy who coaches. I've been coaching for 20 years on all different sort of modalities, and I thought, wow, I really appreciate this one. It has a different sense of reasoning to it that I think hits home faster, and that's needed, right? So if it doesn't hit home right away, where people can take it, use it, implement it, and resonate with it, that's key. So thank you for being our coach in this process, and all the other many things that you've already helped us with in our short period of time. So I look forward to continuing working with you for sure.